There is a specific kind of silence that exists only on water. I don't mean the quiet of a library or an empty house or a stretch of countryside at 3 in the morning. Those silences have texture to them, a background hum of land and infrastructure and buried electrical current that you stop consciously registering, but that's always there underneath everything. A low continuous reassurance that the world is running. Water silence is different. Water silence is total. It sits on you like a physical weight, like something that has its own intentions. And once you've heard it, you understand in your body why ancient people believed that the deep places of lakes were not simply wet geography, but something else entirely. Something occupied. I understand that now. I understand it the way you understand a thing that has been demonstrated to you directly, personally, without any possibility of alternate interpretation. My name is Danielle. I'm 36 years old, and I work as a freelance technical writer based out of Duluth, Minnesota. It's solitary work by nature, and I've built a life around solitude that suits me well. I live alone. I work alone. I take long drives by myself on the weekends along the Lake Superior shoreline, and I find that arrangement deeply satisfying rather than lacking. I tell you this because I need you to understand that what frightened me was not the isolation. I am genuinely comfortable alone in remote places. The isolation was, in fact, the thing I was seeking. What frightened me was the discovery that I wasn't alone at all. I found the rental listing in late June on one of those vacation property sites. A converted fishing cabin on a small private island in a lake about 30 miles northeast of Ely, which is already about as far into the Minnesota wilderness as most people are willing to go. The island was called Harrow Island on the county maps, though the listing didn't mention that name. It was listed simply as Lake House, island property, boat access only, 400 square feet, one room with a sleeping loft, a narrow dock on the south side, a john boat with a small outboard motor included for the duration of the stay, tied at the mainland launch point 3/4 of a mile across the water. The photographs were extraordinary, dense spruce and birch right to the water's edge. The cabin sitting in a small cleared area near the dock, weathered gray wood, a screened porch facing west for the sunsets. The lake's surface in every photo was this extraordinary deep blue-green, perfectly clear, and you could see the rock bottom in the shallows near the dock dropping away into darker water further out. Clear and deep and ancient. The kind of lake that formed in a glacial gouge 10,000 years ago and has been sitting there accumulating its own history ever since. I booked it for 10 days. The owner, a man named Arvo Makinen, whose family had owned the island since the 1940s, communicated entirely by email in short, practical sentences. He told me where to leave my car at the mainland launch. He told me the outboard had a fresh fuel mix and was reliable. He told me where the cabin key was hidden on the dock. He told me that cell signal was non-existent on the island, but the cabin had a satellite phone for emergencies on the shelf above the kitchen sink. He told me the lake was cold even in July and to be careful if I swam. His last email, sent the evening before I arrived, contained one additional line that I read quickly and didn't think about until much later. It said, "The cabin faces west. At night, stay on the west side." I read it at the time as a practical suggestion about mosquitoes, or about the wind direction, or about the view. Some local knowledge about the property that was simply too compressed in the communication to elaborate on. I filed it and forgot it. I crossed to the island on a Sunday afternoon in brilliant July sunshine with my bags and my laptop and 3 boxes of groceries and a completely uncomplicated sense of happiness. The crossing took about 12 minutes in the john boat, the outboard putting its low, reliable note out across the water, the mainland tree line behind me, and the island tree line ahead coming slowly clearer as I went. The lake was glassy and still. I could see my own reflection in the water alongside the boat, sharp and clean, keeping pace with me the whole way across. That first evening was everything I'd hoped for. I unpacked. I made dinner. I sat on the west porch and watched the sun go down over the tree line in colors that had no business being as vivid as they were. I read for 2 hours after dark with the screened porch door open and the lamp throwing warm light out across the dock boards. The silence was magnificent, complete. I slept better than I had in months. The first thing I noticed was on the second day. I had taken the john boat out in the morning to fish the deeper channel on the north side of the island. I wasn't a particularly skilled fisher, but I found the activity meditative and the lake was cooperative. I was anchored in about 12 feet of water, clear enough that I could see the bottom, and I was watching my line and not thinking about much when I noticed something that snagged my attention and refused to let it go. My reflection on the water surface was slightly wrong. Not dramatically, nothing that would stop you cold. More the way a word can look suddenly strange if you stare at it too long. The familiar becoming unfamiliar at the edges. I was sitting completely still in the boat, and my reflection was sitting still as well, which was correct. But the reflection's posture was subtly different from mine. My shoulders were squared toward the bow. My reflection's shoulders were angled fractionally toward the east bank. A small divergence. The kind your brain files as a trick of the ripple pattern on the surface and moves on from. I moved on from it. On the fourth night I heard it for the first time. I was in the sleeping loft, genuinely asleep, somewhere past midnight. What woke me was a sound from directly beneath the cabin. The cabin was built on a timber foundation that sat partly on the island's rock shelf and partly extended over the water on the south side. The dock structure incorporated into the building's underside, and there was maybe 3 feet of clearance between the cabin floor and the water surface on that end. I knew this from looking at it during the day. It was simply construction, architecture over water. The sound was movement in that space. Deliberate, unhurried movement. Something shifting its weight against the dock timber with a slow regularity that was neither the random knock of floating debris nor the lapping pattern of wave action. This was directed, purposeful. Something moving from the water side of the understructure toward the land side, crossing beneath me. Slowly, I lay completely still in the loft and listened to it cross beneath the cabin from east to west, and then stop, directly below where I was lying. And then, for a very long time, nothing. Silence. The total water silence with this one occupied point in it, directly below me, that I could feel the way you feel a change in air pressure. I did not sleep again that night. When the sky went gray, I went downstairs and out onto the dock and looked at the understructure from the south side. The water beneath it was still and clear and empty. Nothing there. The timbers showed no new marks. Everything ordinary. I told myself it was an animal. An otter, possibly, or a beaver. Both lived in this lake. Both were capable of exactly that kind of movement beneath a dock structure. I had a good working explanation and I used it efficiently, and I went back inside and made coffee and was mostly convinced. On the 6th night it came back. Same time, past midnight. Same crossing pattern from east to west beneath the cabin. The same deliberate, unhurried pace. The same long stillness beneath the loft afterward. But this time, after the stillness, something else. A sound I have spent 2 months trying to describe accurately and have never managed to the degree the original deserved. It was a voice, not words, nothing articulate. A low, sustained vocalization coming from beneath the floorboards, rising and falling in a pattern that had the structure of speech without the content of it. The rhythm of sentences without the meaning. The cadence of someone talking quietly to themselves, absorbed in private thought, not intending to be overheard. Completely human in its musicality and its pattern. Completely inhuman in its origin. Because it was coming from 3 feet above the waterline of a northern Minnesota lake in the dark of a July night. From a space I had visually confirmed was empty that same morning, from beneath 4 inches of pine flooring that were all that separated me from whatever was underneath them. I did not move. I did not make a sound. I lay in that loft with every muscle in my body locked solid, and I listened to the voice beneath me rise and fall, for a duration I cannot accurately estimate because time was not functioning normally in that loft during those minutes. And then, in the pattern of that formless vocalization, something clarified. Not words, not quite, but a name. The particular rhythm of a name, 2 syllables, rising on the first and falling on the second, repeated 3 times with the patient quality of someone calling for a person they expect to come. The rhythm of my name. Danielle, Danielle, Danielle. I was in the John boat with my 2 most critical bags before the sky was light enough to see by. I crossed 3/4 of a mile of open water in near darkness with the outboard at full throttle and my eyes locked on the mainland launch the entire way. I did not look back at the island. Not once during that crossing. Not once. I drove 4 hours to Duluth without stopping. I sent Arvo Makinen an email that afternoon. A careful, measured email. I told him I had left the property early for personal reasons. I thanked him for the rental. And at the end, because I could not help myself, I asked him what he had meant about staying on the west side at night. He replied 6 hours later. One sentence. It said, "The east side is where it listens." I wrote back immediately. I asked what listens. I asked what he meant. I asked every question I had been accumulating for 6 nights on that island. He never replied again. I have looked up the property records for Harrow Island twice since then. The island has been in the Mackinnon family since 1947. In that time, according to county records, the cabin has had 1 permitted renovation and 3 changes to the dock structure. The dock was extended in 1989, shortened in 2003, and reinforced in 2011. Each time, the work records show the contractor completed only the landside portion of the job. The waterside portion of the dock, the part that extends over the deeper water, the part directly below the sleeping loft, was left untouched each time. No notation, no explanation, just left alone. I think about what was beneath that cabin. I think about the voice that knew the shape of my name after 6 days. I think about a reflection on still water with its shoulders angled wrong. I think about whatever has been living in that dark, cold water space, under those boards, longer than any contractor was willing to work above it. I think about the families who have rented that cabin over the years, crossing the lake in sunshine with their groceries and their kayaks and their uncomplicated happiness, lying in that loft on their first night listening to the extraordinary silence. And I think about how long it takes something patient enough to learn a name. If you've ever stayed somewhere surrounded by water and understood, in the dark hours, that the water was not empty, I want you to describe it in the comments. Every detail, what you heard, what you saw, what made you understand that the deep places beneath you were not simply geography. And if you want more stories from people who crossed water to reach somewhere they should never have gone, subscribe to Campfire Nightmares. Because the deep places of old lakes have been accumulating their own history for 10,000 years. And some of that history, I promise you, is still very much present, still very much listening, waiting for the next boat to cross.